Today we are discussing government anew. In the American Constitution, which we all need to understand and even recite part of it, I'm out to find out who can explain the main features and functions of the US government and its political system. I'll be asking questions, 4 questions for today. What are the 3 main branches of the government? What does each branch do? Democrats and Republicans are the major parties. Which is the 3rd party? What is the basic process by which a bill becomes a law? Let's hit the road, and here I have some people to interview. Thank you. Hello, my name is Charles Ngene. Today I'm carrying out an interview with various people, whoever will come across in the street or in the house. We are discussing on function of the US government and its political system. I'm happy to have one Margaret here who would like to interview and find out how she understands about American political system and its parliament. Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
As I said, my name is Charles Ngene, and I would like to interview you about American political system and its parliament, if you understand it. Do you mind to give me an interview?
Yes.
Thank you. I need a consent from you before you proceed, because this is a legal document, although it will not be used for public. My name is Charles Ngene, and today is September 3rd, 2018, and I am a student in the Bachelor of Arts program with the College for America at Southern New Hampshire University. I am conducting this interview as a part of my academic work. With your consent, I will record this interview and use the information in a government and you project. I'm working on for a structure of United States government and its parliament project. The interview will be used to create a street interview and submitted to College for America so that my project can be evaluated. This recording will be used solely for this purpose. The interview information will be temporarily stored in the College for America online evaluation system, to which only the evaluator and College for America staff will have access. Do you have any questions, Margaret?
I don't have. You can proceed with your questions.
Thank you. Do you give your consent to be interviewed and recorded?
I do.
Then repeat this after me. I, Margaret,
I, Margaret,
give my informed consent and participate
give my informed consent to participate in this interview to be recorded and used as a part of the students' academic work.
Thank you, Margaret. Now, Margaret, I know you love this country and you follow up issues on its parliament and the constitution. Tell me, do you know the 3 branches of the US government?
I think I can guess through what I have learned. Yeah, there are 3 arms in government: the legislature, which is composed of the senators and the Senate, and the House of Representatives. And then there is the executive, which is consists of the president and the vice president and the cabinet.
And the 3rd one is?
And the 3rd one is the judicial or judiciary.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What does each branch do? Can you tell us what legislative does?
The legislative make laws. It makes laws, and the executive carries the laws. The judicial evaluates the laws.
Oh, thank you, Margaret.
Yes.
You seem to understand these things. Now,
Just a little, not more.
thank you. Now, Democrats and Republicans are the major parties
Yeah.
Can you name the third political party?
Yeah, there is that political party which is a Libertarian Party and Green, something with green something, I can't remember, Green Party, and also there is Tea Party. I have heard of Tea Party for Sarah Palin.
So which is the third largest political party in US?
Libertarian Party.
Okay. Do you know how many seats they have in the parliament?
30 something.
Oh, 49. You are right. Thank you. And Margaret, what is the basic process by which a bill becomes a law? Do you know?
A bill becomes a law. It is, first of all, it is drafted. It is drafted by the members of Congress and the House representative, and then it is taken to the House. It is debated to the relevant committees, and then after it goes through, it's taken to the president to look at it and see how it is. He may reject or agree with it, and when he disagree with it, it is taken back to the House of Representatives, to the Senate, and then they debate again until it will follow the steps that are needed again for it to become a law when the president signs it. That's all what I understand. Maybe there are things, they are in between, but all I know, it is relevant steps until it gets to the president.
Thank you, Margaret.
Yep.
Only to collect you and to keep you well informed with how this system works. The executive is the president and his team of workers. And it's a big number of workers president carry around with him. The executive is composed of president, vice president, cabinet members. And the president is the head of US government and the commander-in-chief of the military. President, as you have said, he enforces laws that the legislative or Congress branch makes. The president is elected in every 4 years by the United States citizen who must be 35 years and a natural-born citizen. The president serves for 4 years term in office and cannot exceed more than 2 terms or serve more than 10 years. Upon election, his wife becomes the first lady with a big number of aides. The Constitution states that president cannot be paid compensation that cannot be increased or decreased during a term. During presidential voting, the votes casted are tallied by state and form the electoral college. Do you get that, Margaret?
I do.
Oh, good. The legislative is a part of government and is also called Congress. So there is no difference between legislative and Congress. The Senate has 100 elected members, and we call them senators. Each senator serves a 6-year term, and 2 senators are drawn from each state. Did you know that, Margaret?
Yes.
The other part of Congress is the House of Representatives, with a total of 435 representatives. The number of representatives is determined by state's population. Each representative serves 2 terms and may be re-elected.
2-year terms. Or
Yes.
is it 2-year term?
And then we have the judiciary. The judicial branch of government evaluates rules and is made up of a court system. It is composed of Supreme and other federal courts. The constitutions of the United States established the judicial branch and defined many of the rights for judicial to protect. Judicial branch provides strong checks and balances to the executive. You get that? Supreme Court has 9 justices, headed by a chief justice, and each remained in court until they retire, resign, or are impeached. They are there to remain.
Or die.
Or die. Thank you, Margaret. That was a good interview. This is Charles Ngene once again. Here I have Neri, whom I'm going to interview to know how well she's versed with the American political system. Today is September 3rd, 2018, and my name is Charles Ngene, a student in the Bachelor of Arts program with the College of America at Southern New Hampshire University. I am conducting this interview as a part of my research on government and you. I'm working on a paper, Structure of United States Government and Political System Project. The interview will be used to create a street view and submit to College for America so that my project can be evaluated. This recording will be used solely for this purpose. The interview information will be temporarily stored in a College for America online evaluation system to which only the evaluator and College for America staff will have access. Neri, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Thank you, Neri. Do you give consent to be interviewed and recorded?
Yes, I do.
Then read this statement. I, Neri,
I, Nelly, give my informed consent to participate in this interview to be recorded and used as part of student academic work.
Thank you, Neri. Neri, I know you must have read more about American Constitution and the Parliament. Let me come with my first question. Democrats and Republicans are the major parties. Can you name a third party?
There is the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, and the Constitutional Party.
Wow, thank you. The Green Party, there is also the Constitution Party. You have heard about it?
Yes.
You have heard about the Constitution Party?
Yes.
Thank you. The other question is how did the two-party system start?
The two-party system started when they merged during the ratification of the Constitution, and this was when the group objected and drafted the Constitution, and the main reason and course were to legitimize the new government for the United States.
Thank you. Oh, you seem to understand this thing well. And a two-party system in the United States is a system where two major political parties dominate voting in nearly all elections at every level of government. And as a result, nearly all elected officials are members of one of the two major parties. Thank you. Neri, what impact do you think do third parties have on national politics?
Third party occasionally impacts and influences elections and party candidates. The party politicians are more ideological and they play a position in the main party, and this influences the drawing of voters and it influenced the drawing of voters and how they'll vote. Yes.
Oh, thank you. I seem to understand these things. Okay, surely they influence elections by drawing voters away from their main two parties. That party do not pursue moderate vote, but uphold their ideological roots. Most that parties are organized entirely around one or two issues, besides seeking broad and fringe ideologies. They seek to raise awareness and attention to the issues they find important to them and put it on national stage. And they sometimes have a win-win situation. Thank you, Neri. I have no more question for you. You seem to understand about the American Constitution. Thank you. I can introduce myself to you for a consent.
Okay.
My name is Charles Ngene, and I read this consent dated today, September 6th, for this interview and video recording to you. I'm a student in the Bachelor of Arts program with the College of America at Southern New Hampshire University, and I'm conducting this interview as a part of my academic work. With your consent, Raymond, I will record this interview and use this information as a street interview video. I'm working on the 3 branches of our government and how a bill becomes a law as my project. The interview will be used to create my project paper and submitted to College for America so that my project can be evaluated. This recording will be used solely for this purpose. The interview information will be temporarily stored in the College for America online evaluation system, to which only the evaluator and College for America staff will have access. Do you have any question this far?
No.
Do you give consent to be interviewed and recorded?
Yes, I do.
Okay, now can you read this statement?
I, Raymond, give my informed consent to participate in this interview, to be recorded and to be used as part of the students' academic work.
Thank you. We can proceed from there. Now, Raymond,
Yes.
let other Americans know how conversant you are with the Constitution. What are the 3 branches and what are their roles?
Well, the system of government in the United States consists of 3 bodies. The first body, as we know of, is the legislature, which basically is the Congress, and it makes the laws. And the second one is the executive, which consists of the president, whose job is to enforce the laws. And the third one is the judiciary, which basically interprets the laws that have been written by Congress.
Oh, good. And how are the 3 branches connected to one another?
So the connection that comes about, first of all, is in the executive, whereby the president will give a final stamp of approval or disapproval in the name of a veto. This is when, after Congress has passed a law, has brought a law before him, before it can be signed, the president looks at the law and decides to approve or disapprove of it. And if he disapproves of it, it's considered a veto. And sometimes the House or the Congress may disagree with the president's veto. And if they do so, they'll need to pass that same law, not with a 50% majority, but a 2/3 majority now. And the second connection we have is the legislature sometimes checks the powers of the president. They can, if the president has an executive action which is unconstitutional, they can overrule the president, or sometimes they can impeach members of the executive, including the president. And another thing that is also it recurs every year is when they pass the budget. After the president's cabinet has approved of a budget, the Congress has to see it and has to agree with the president to sign it to make it a law. And sometimes also the Congress has to have an approval for all presidential appointees, including judges, Supreme and Federal Court judges, to be precise.
Well, I like what you are saying, but now I will ask you a very technical point.
Yes.
How do the same 3 branches of the government regulate each other? That is check and balances.
So basically the legislature, as I said, its work is to check on the executive orders. Sometimes a president can give an executive order and they can overrule it, or they can also override the president's veto when the president has refused to sign a law that they wanted to pass. And for the judiciary, it normally also checks the executive. If the executive or the president breaks the law, or they approve of or they have a law that is unconstitutional, the judges or the judiciary has the right to go and look at that law and see whether it violates the terms of the Constitution. And the executive basically also controls the judiciary, has a check on the judiciary, in that they can appoint Supreme Court judges and Federal Court judges.
Just to add something on that, in order to prevent any branch of government from being too powerful, the framers of our Constitution created a system of check and balances.
Yeah.
Each branch of the government has checks on others, while itself is also checked.
Yes.
the COBREC system can also be outlined that legislature checks executive.
Yes.
Executive checks legislature.
Yeah.
Judicial checks legislative, and legislative checks judicial.
Yes.
Case in point is whereby presidents who implements law goes out there and gives some recommendation which somebody feels is not the right thing, and they go to court, and court will overrule that.
Yes.
Is that it's unconstitutional.
Yeah, yeah.
The same applies if something happens within the legislature and they make a law which will be interpreted by judicial, and
Exactly.
judiciary can come out very clean and say it's also unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So both of them cannot claim to be superior from one another.
Exactly. It's a balancing act.
It's a balancing act.
Yes.
Thank you that you understand that.
Yeah.
Now, describe the role of sponsors of a bill.
So sponsors of a bill are a sponsor is normally a member of the legislature. It can be a senate or a representative or any delegate from any U.S. territory. That includes Puerto Rico, anything overseas, as long as it's under U.S. territory. And the sponsor introduces a bill in Congress, and it can be one or two sponsors. So, the second sponsor is called a co-sponsor, where you bring an idea or a law or a bill into the floor of the legislature. And when the legislature looks at the bill, they can support it then or not support it. And if they choose to support it, they push it towards the second step, which you call the committee. Now, the committee is like an umbrella group that deals specifically with what the bill entails. So let's say if the bill involves something to do with military or national security, you're going to send that to the National Security Committee. And within National Security Committee, you have subcommittees which are more specific and more technical to whatever pertains to the bill. And they're the ones who look at the bill and they can recommend that you move forward with it. They can add the ideas to it, or they can chip away some ideas, or they can totally reject it. And if it comes out of committee, that means it can move forward. And when it moves forward, it goes towards the stage where you debate.
Let me ask you, Raymond,
Yes.
who are the co-sponsors?
Co-sponsors are basically it can be anybody who introduces the bill. Co-sponsors are people who support the bill, rather. Like if you want to bring a bill about something, you can't just do it alone, and you need support for it to garner support. You get more heads put together, so to speak.
Thank you, that is good. And the committees,
Yes.
which committees are we talking about?
So the committees are basically, look at them as departments within the bill making framework, that they're specific to whatever department it is. As I said, if you have a bill that entails national security, you go to the National Security Committee. It consists of members who are well versed in issues of national security. So it's only good for them to look at the bill more closely to see what matters pertain to it, what is important, whether the bill is needed, whether it's useful, or whether it takes away from the Constitution.
And just to add something there, both houses of Congress, the House and the Senate, are divided in large group called committees.
Yes.
As you have said, and I've got it very clear,
Yeah.
that within the committees, we have subcommittees,
Yes.
which specifically deals with the specific issues.
Yes.
Those subcommittees are even more specialized.
Yes.
With one, I would mention like military nuclear weapons
Yeah.
and other military.
Exactly.
It will go specifically to people who understand the military.
Yes.
Bills typically concern specific topics.
Yeah.
When we are talking about intelligence, we are talking about health, we need people who understand health, and those are the ones who are in those subcommittees.
Exactly. They're the technocrats, so to speak.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Raymond, you seem to understand this now. What are the debate and what happened in the debate?
So the debate is a step after the committee, and this is where you bring the bill into to everybody, so that they can have a discussion about it. And this involves you having the discussion with the whole house and the rules of the house. You know, if you agree or disagree, or you approve or disapprove, you have a back and forth of ideas, opposing ideas. They can be ideas that unite, but this is where you have everybody who has something to say about the bill talking about it within the Senate or the House. And sometimes if one party does not get whatever it wants, it can use other tactics that are under House rules. One of them is the filibuster. A filibuster is when you have a member of one group opposing the bill. They can take the floor of the Senate and talk without giving a chance to the other side to address the issue, in hopes of bringing a compromise. So until the bill gets to a compromise, then that's when, if it gets to a compromise, and then they can move forward to where they actually vote on the bill.
Oh, good. Debate is limited by the rules formulated in the Rules Committee. The Committee of the Whole debate in the House amends the bill but cannot technically pass it.
Yes.
Good to know that debate is guided by the sponsoring committee, and time is divided equally among the proponents and the opponents.
Yes.
The committee decides how much time to allocate to each person.
Yeah.
It's also good to know that Senate debate is unlimited unless cloture is invoked, and members can speak as long as they want, and amendment need not be done.
Yeah.
Oh, good. The third item would be, tell us about voting.
So voting is now this is where the bill itself. This is where we have a do or die situation for the bill. It has been debated, and it has been approved to go to voting. In voting, you need a full house. You need everybody to be there so that their vote can be counted. And normally, when you have a voting, you can either do it by simple majority, where you have, or which a simple majority, which I think they call the nuclear option, or you can have a situation whereby the voting needs a higher number of majority. Let's say like a 2/3 majority to be voted. If the vote wins the bill, if the voting favors the bill, then the bill will move forward. But basically, voting is where it's do or die for that particular bill before it can become law.
I have no doubt Americans do understand their constitution and the government and its political system. They have explained very well how the federal government has 3 branches, and each branch is independent from one another. There are the executive, legislative, and judiciary, with their main functions being that executive is administered by the president, who is the head of the state, and his main duties are to enforce laws that the legislative or Congress makes. When legislative or Congress makes law, the president may sign it or veto it, or decline it. But subject is to that vote by the Congress. When the executive or the president execute the laws, legislative or Congress oversees the execution of the law. And that's where the court comes in. The judiciary interprets the meaning of the law that has been made by the legislative, the second arm of the government. And you can see how they countercheck one another. Legislative makes the law, and 5 executive actions are now authorized. Legislative can impeach president if he misuses that law. But he might do right, but people will feel offended and they will go to court, and court can rule it as unconstitutional. Americans have also explained the basic process by which a bill becomes a law, and when a bill is drafted by members of the Congress, even the president or the executive arm, or even a group from outside can draft a bill to be presented to the Parliament or the Congress by a member of the Parliament. When it is introduced in the House, representative from the House or a member who presents it is the sponsor of the bill. Then the first committee is the committee of the House, which receives the bill. Then they take it to their subcommittees, the committees that are formed by special people who understand that specific bill. Then it will go for the little committees and to the floor of the House. And from there, it will be again introduced into the Senate if it has managed to pass through. The bill will be called up, and this when the voting is done, and the floor on action is taken, the bill passes or it fails. And if it passes, it will go to a conference committee. Then a vote is done once again, called upon by all the present members. And that is very crucial, because if it does not pass, that will be the end of it. So that's when we say there is a vote on compromise. If it passes, then it will be taken to the president, who again may sign it or may decline to sign, and that's what they call veto. And if he vetoes again, he can be overruled by the legislative if they have 3/4 of vote of their members. Thank you. Thank you once again, and